blah, blah. You gotta do it. It takes, we've been working on one since the beginning of May, and we now are in the final stages of getting that approved for Northern Kent County. It takes several months. We'll be talking about a timeline to start moving into that phase of protocol development. Once an exposure assessment begins, it's about, according to ATSDR, about a 2-year effort from the time you coordinate clinics, get blood samples, get everybody's blood, run it to the lab has to analyze it, review all the data, report it back to the system, put out a final report, and get it off, to the feds if that's what people want done with their results. That's the process. I'll stop there.
Okay, so just to clarify,
Yeah.
it would be your understanding that even if it took us 2 years to get to the point where blood tests were made available to some people in our community, that the levels of PFAS in our blood would not have decreased dramatically over that 2-year time.
So 2 things. It wouldn't take 2 years to get to it. I'm saying it takes 2 years to run an exposure assessment. So I'm looking at like once we write the protocol and get it through, which seems to take about 4 to 5 months to get through that process. So it's probably sometime, assuming everybody above me, I don't get to make these choices by myself. I just get to set up, advocate, and sort of put forth a good idea, what I think can be defended scientifically and in cooperation with my local health partners and ATSDR. It takes probably about 6 months to get to the point where we can start collecting blood samples, right? And so then from there, it takes about probably, I'd say about 2 years till we finish out the entire project. Somewhere in between that time, we're reporting blood samples back to the individuals so they know their results. And then on a de-identified basis, so you wouldn't know your neighbor's blood sample, we put it all together in a scientific report and release it to the community and say, this is what we think the current blood levels are. Now, to your point, what do you do in that time from the time we can estimate when exposure ended, which we kind of have that pretty clear, but there's also a question of how long were people drinking the water? And there's various theories about that we'll have to consider in what do you do with a blood sample. Once you end drinking the water, we know that it takes about, for PFAS, somewhere between 3 to 5 years to go from, say, if I had 100 units today, 3 to 5 years from now, I'm going to get down to 50 units, and 3 to 5 years after that, down to 25 units. We can back calculate, we can say, okay, this is what your blood when we took it on a particular day, and then we can sort of back calculate and say, it may have been as high as this when you stopped drinking the water, back when. So we can back estimate. They did that on the C8 study down in the major epidemiologic study on thank you, sir, very much, appreciate that. So, and we have access to the folks who did that study. Scott Bartell and Dr. Savitz are two of the fine people who worked on and helped, and this guy, Scott Bartell, who's our science advisory board, actually did that sort of back calculation. So we have access to the people who know how to do that, and we can account for that concern.
I just want to add one point, highlight one key point that Corey brought up, is that an exposure assessment, either an exposure assessment or a health study, is really meant to benefit the community, benefit the population, benefit the common good. It won't tell the individual risk assessment about you or your personal loved one. It's really to be done for your neighbor and for the entire community. And that information is also would be interpreted on a population or a community-based level. So that's a key point just to also share with you as well, of what that information would be informing the community about.
I have a statement from right on Summerdale, and right across from me is Spiral. And 15 houses, right in a row, 12 people had cancer. The people that, and the other houses are newer people that have only been there 5 years. But the rest of us that have been there 45, 55 years, out of 12 houses, 10 people have cancer. Now, is that considered a cluster or considered anything to do with water? And you said exposure.
Yes, that's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. There's another part to this. I'll say a couple things and you can jump in. So the two cancers, there are two cancers that have been linked or associated with PFAS, that's testicular and kidney. That doesn't mean other cancers couldn't be. So by me saying that, there's a lot we don't know. The old concept of the absence of evidence is not evidence that, the absence could Right, exactly. So one thing we are doing is we will go and look at existing cancer records in the health statistics, in the vital records and health statistics division in MDHHS. So every cancer that occurs gets reported at some point to the state and national cancer registry by law. Having said that, there's a lot of limitations, and people are often frustrated when we go do those health statistics reviews and come back and I say this. I'm going to tell you now so that when we do this later and we talk that you've heard it once already, which is this. Okay, in that when they report your cancer, they give the address at the time you were diagnosed. So if I moved into Parchment 2 weeks ago, got diagnosed with cancer, my cancer gets counted in Parchment. But I lived for 45 years out in California amongst the fig groves, breathing in pesticides. Oh, should I count? Right, I shouldn't count. To your question, example.
People that have been there for 40, 50 years.
And so that will improve the validity of looking at these health statistics. So when we look at that, right, if one of the caveats though is they also don't tell you that information, like how long have you lived in the community, or where did you work? Did you work at Crown Vantage and were you the one somehow slathering PFAS every day as your job? Or was or were you somebody who, just was some other, job at a clerk somewhere, right?
Could be, you don't know.
You don't know, exactly. So when we come out, here's the reality of the health statistics review. Findings of what's persistent elevated cancer would drive us to do an exposure assessment. Well, why are you going to do an exposure assessment? Non-findings of a health statistics review can't be said, we could not say that, oh, well, therefore no one's harmed. It doesn't allow you to say that. So that's something we will look at just out of perfunctory performance. It's our job to check. But exposure assessment really is the next logical step to the question of how much should we all get exposed to? And the reason that's true is CDC has already established that. I said everybody's been exposed, so we have a comparison group. We can say, oh, are you like everybody else in the nation, or are you much higher? It doesn't really, and to Dr. Nelson's point, we're not going to be able to tell you about, oh, you're more likely or not to get a particular cancer, or, oh, I have this health condition, was it caused by PFAS? And that is not going to be something that can be easily, well, I really would say it's unlikely to ever be able to make that connection in a clear way.
I agree with everything that Corey just said, and it really is that specific question you asked about concern about a cancer cluster. We'd be looking at what is an expected cancer rate and comparing it to what is observed in our community and what is the difference there. That would be the information that would be gained. It would generate more questions for us to ask, and it wouldn't allow us to connect that possible outcome, that cancer, to PFAS exposure. It would just generate more questions.
And you had your hand up earlier. Do you still have a question?
Yeah.
Michael Bocchino, 5070 Citadel Street. I'm not one to bite my tongue on anything. I'm not sure about all of my constituents here that live up by me or in the community, but I will say this much. Like it or not, we've been watching on the internet. I'm not the only one here. A lot of the elderly ones as well, most of which knew my grandfather when he was still here, who developed cancer. He used to live over on Remus Street, down there where the old mill used to be, and then he moved up to 1497 East G Avenue. which also was one of the houses before he sold it that tested for PFAS also, believe it or not. So, going up towards G Avenue, past the high school and all that, where one of these lovely ladies over here wound up saying, on Mount Olivet, there was a couple houses tested for PFAS also, so it is up there by my neck of the woods. What I'd like to know is point blank, are the houses up on Citadel Street and even Clado going to be tested as well? Okay? Like it or not, if my grandfather got sick with multiple myeloma, stage 3 bone cancer, Borges Hospital diagnosed him. We never knew about it. And like it or not, that cancer is still not very well known from what the doctor that examined him stated in his own personal opinion. He had 3 doctors look at him. What's it gonna take if my area is not being looked at right now? What is it gonna take to get a couple of individuals up there to look at my area? Because if Mount Olivet's infected, you just never know. What's it gonna take for me to be put in a cardboard box, a pine box, excuse me, and have my tombstone right over there on East Cooper Cemetery? Or somebody does something? Or one of these people out here? When is it gonna happen? When are we gonna be tested up there on Citadel Street, Clado, and all that area? Because if Mount Olivet has it, I can almost guarantee you, my ward has it. Look at Summerdale. They just wound up being tested, and there was a couple houses over there. Right or wrong? Thank you.
Just to clarify your question is about testing your own personal residential well for PFAS?
Yeah, there was a gentleman who wound up stating, when I went to go pick up water at Haven, one of the sheriffs over there, I spoke, and he said, one of them stated that, oh, well, your street's not on the list. And then the other gentleman, that was the county sheriff, walked over and said, let him through. I don't remember, it was an elderly sheriff. He said, let him through. And I asked him, okay, what's going on here? I'm being told one thing, and then you're telling me that, he goes, do you want the water or not? And I said, yes.
There was a day of miscommunication.
Yes.
And I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
One of the things that we worked out that very next day to get a message that was the same from the DEQ, and because the health department and I were on a different page than what the DEQ was at the time, so we worked to rectify that. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, he said that, with all due respect, Mr. Sorensen, he did state that you were working your tail off to turn around and keep the water flow going. And for that, I thank you. And each and every one of you guys here. But hopefully something will be done in my neck of the woods, because please don't insult us. If one of the houses on Mount Olivet got infected over there, and now houses over on Somerville are being infected, somehow the PFAS trailed its way uphill, okay? And believe me, I'm no spring chicken. I'm very alert, and I've been watching the Cooper Township Concerned Citizens Facebook website. There's a lot of houses if you bother to look. A lot of the people on there, there's a reason why so many numbers wound up going higher than ever before on there. They don't trust the government anymore. And with all due respect, not to insult you guys, they don't trust you either. Okay? I'm sorry to say this, but like I said, it's the truth. I'm not sure why nobody has turned around and stated that, but I know that you'd rather hear it from one of the voters here than somebody else. But we see now, something's starting to be done. Mr. Sorensen, you're the reason why that water went through, according to the county sheriff that I spoke to. So I'm going to say this looking you straight in the eye. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. What about if we have an open wound? That would be considered oral, if I'm not mistaken. The PFAS would have traveled through the bloodstream in an open wound.
So it wouldn't technically be the same as oral consumption, and the amount that could be absorbed through an open wound would be very small, and it would not pose concern under normal circumstances. In fact, other kinds of infection, or you can speak to this more, but would be of a greater concern than the amount that would be possible to be absorbed into your bloodstream. But it could be at a very, very small level, but you're right.
That was my question, if I could just elaborate on that. There was actually the mayor of Parchment and a health official went to one of the residents' homes when they first found out and told her to stop showering with the water because she has lupus, she has an autoimmune disease, and she has sores. Do you know if any of these people are affected by that? Have you put out any notices for them to contact the health department if they have extenuating circumstances? And I guess I'll just lump this in to young moms who are breastfeeding. I think that it's important that you make them aware that they're still passing this on to their infants. Maybe everybody should, go on Google and figure that out, but I think it's important that people understand that there are other ways that you can expose your children to it, who also probably drink a little bit of bathwater too.
Thank you. These are very genuine concerns. We've got folks with underlying medical conditions. We have folks who are pregnant. We have folks who are breastfeeding. So these are all legitimate concerns that folks in our community have. So first, with regards to dermal exposure, again, the main amount of exposure that we are concerned about is ingestion, is the swallowing. I haven't reviewed any literature that suggests that open sores or autoimmune diseases such as lupus poses a greater health risk. We can look at, again, our literature in consultation with our state toxicologist, but I have not seen that evidence. The main amount of exposure concern is that ingestion. With regards to breastfeeding, we have lots of data on the value and the importance of breastfeeding, both for the baby and also for a postpartum mom, as well as women's delivery baby as well. We recommend to continue breastfeeding. The benefits of breastfeeding, even in spite of exposure to PFAS, and again, ingestion exposure far outweighs the risk posed to the infant with regards to development of that infant.
But is that really your place to make that decision? I mean, don't you think that that's something that a mother should be able to weigh out? I mean, give her the information, to know that how much of it's passing through. Are studies being done? Are they interested in doing that? What about mothers who have breastfed beyond the 2-year mark, which is now the new American Academy of Pediatrics recommends the max benefit of 2 years, and beyond that is sort of elective. Do you suggest that those mothers keep going with it, or at that point they've kind of maxed out the benefit? Every case is different, but you're not putting out any literature or any information or reaching out to people telling them, that these things may affect them. I think, I can't speak for everyone in this room, but some of the people I've spoke with in Parchment feel like everyone's just being really quiet about things. Put something out daily if you have to. They were doing those reports, but now that we're on municipal water in Parchment, it's just kind of like, well, if you have concerns, reach out to us. Like, people don't even know what to be concerned about. You're the experts. So as far as breastfeeding, like I said, so beyond 2 years, what would your recommendation be?
So there's two questions there. The first question is your route of exposure between PFAS and breast milk to infant. We can talk, I'll defer that question regarding the specific levels of that to our state toxicologist. And then the second point is the should. Should I continue breastfeeding my infant in a mom who's been exposed to PFAS? And that's a decision you need to make with your personal physician. Talk to your family doctor, talk to your pediatrician, your OBGYN, and say, hey, given what you know about me and my baby, my relationship, and what's happening in our community, what is your recommendation with regards to breastfeeding? With regards to the specific 2-year question, I don't think that question has been asked and has been studied, and I don't think it will be studied. It's really hard to do a study like that to even have that specific type of information.
You can study me. I have a 3-year-old who's still nursing, and that's a decision I have to fight with myself on every day. At this point, it's more of a comfort thing. So do you tell your child, no, because medically I know that you don't really need it anymore? Sympathize with us here. This is my only child and the only child I'll ever have. and this is gonna be the end of the road for that bond with her and I, is knowing that her final sip will have PFAS in it.
Yeah, that bond between mom and baby is just so important. And I have those conversations with moms every day in my clinic as a family doc about the importance of breastfeeding. I'll share personally. I have a 2-month at home, and that relationship with mom and dad is just so important. But again, we haven't done that specific study to ask about long-term breastfeeding and those types of health effects. What I can say as a family doctor, what I can say is if I know about the benefits of breastfeeding, that I personally, as a family doctor, someone would come to me and say, I would continue breastfeeding because the benefits outweigh the risk. But that's a question that I recommend you have with your personal physician and ask that question.
Well, and I guess I just want to finish up with saying, if you could reach out to these physicians, I go to Borges ProMed. It's a huge facility. I know you guys had reached out to them. I knew as soon as I called them that they had spoken with someone because I got a very stock response about the PFAS. Kind of what I feel the health department told them, to say to kind of help people, kind of ease their concerns. But it generally, those doctors are part of the Borges group. They're very knowledgeable. They have a lot of, current information. They don't know really anything about PFAS. So if you feel that you can equip them somehow to have these conversations with mothers, that would be great, because all I'm getting is a call the health department, we don't really know, and that's from Borges.
Be happy to have further conversations with the health systems, for sure. And correct, we did send out a local health department alert and a state health department alert to all personal physicians the morning after July 27th. We also provided the ATSDR, Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, physician guidance document as well, which is kind of the standard for which we make personal medical decisions with. So that information has been communicated to our local physicians and our local providers. I have been in communication with both health systems in our community as well as local providers as well, and I'd be happy to have further conversations. And hearing this information, I'll reach out again and say, what else are you hearing of patient concerns and community member concerns?
Thank you.
Is there somebody way in the back?
So one thing we haven't talked about are the schools that have been affected in this PFAS area, the school systems that are in the PFAS area. My son grew up in Parchment, went to Parchment schools, and he has drank this water his entire life, and he lives, unfortunately, in the PFAS area now. But have they talked about, North Elementary is right next to the river, and that school was highly affected with the PFAS. In fact, I heard it scored very high on the rate, but those kids have drank that water all their lives. Like, what are the effects of that now as an adult?
So you're asking the same question that was asked earlier. How do you figure out when you had a community drinking, a contaminated water for a long period of time, were there health effects in the area? And the way you answer that question, the way it's been answered, and honestly, the reason we're here tonight is because down along the Ohio River, where they did that study. They had that situation, municipal water. The average concentration there was 3,500 parts per trillion of PFOA, and they drank it for years, and there were 60-some thousand people, and they did a very extensive, what's called a forward-looking study. They followed them, and that's where they came up with this long list of chronic diseases that have many causes, but it appears that PFAS can contribute to them. So I mentioned testicular cancer, I mentioned kidney cancer, elevated cholesterol may impact thyroid function. There's a couple others there I'm fading out on. But yes, so we know it's in the literature. We ended the exposure. The chemical does leave the body over time. And the best we can do going forward is do an exposure assessment for those who would be interested. We go through that and then make that opportunity available up through the ATSDR health study. But then it'll be up to the federal government and who they invite. It's not a satisfying answer, and I'm sorry that it's not better than that, but it's not it anyway. That is the answer.
Way in the back corner, Pat.
We have, a lot of us have gardens.
Name and address, please.
Larry Busselman, I live on 1165 East G Avenue, right by Riverview. A lot of us have gardens. We've all been told not to eat any of our stuff. The only thing we can use is our pumpkins. I mean, we can give that to our kids. As far as gardens wasting all that produce, all that stuff is, okay, that's understandable this year. But next year, are we gonna be able to use that ground, like being watered down with Kalamazoo water, the Kalamazoo city water? Can we use our swimming pools? Is our swimming pools gonna have to be drained and started over again? Or, I mean, it's a bad time of year, they're gonna be drained anyway. I'm talking next year.
I'll walk back up, but I'll answer that, because that question about gardens was asked before, and we did fail to address that. So the advice on gardens has come out of the Michigan Department of Agricultural and Rural Development. They have taken, I would say, a very conservative health protective approach, which is, I believe they're saying if it was above 70 parts per trillion, and I guess we really at some point need to explain that 70, how that is a level when you are below which we really have no concern. There's very little concern about harm drinking, something around 70 parts per trillion. We can talk about that more. But what they're saying is, they've said in a very conservative way that if you're using water above 70 parts per trillion and you put it on your garden, that they can't be confident that it's not going to get into the produce. There was a study done by Minnesota. It wasn't a comprehensive study, but it was a situation there where they had released, it was in the water, it was in the water they were using to water the gardens. They tested the vegetables. They did find some percentage of it went in. It wasn't 100% uptake sort of situation, but they didn't sit and break it down by, a tomato probably takes up a lot more, than a real cute than a carrot. Okay, I'm guessing, and that is a guess because there's not that kind of detailed literature out there. Is there more to be said on that than, do you have more detailed reading the literature? She reads the literature a lot more than I do.
I think one of the questions too, that part of his question is next year when they grow their stuff on that ground.
The ground uptake question. We have had some tax scholars looking at that, and again, it seems like there's some minimal chance of uptake getting into the water, into the plants, but do you want to expound?
Well, unfortunately, the additional information I have is that we don't have a lot of knowledge about the long-term stability of the PFAS in soil. So it's really difficult for us to say, and I know there are experts at MDAR that are actively looking into this and that are actually trying to plan a crop uptake study to actually answer these questions. But right now, we don't know a good answer to that because no one has measured that before and no one's looked at it. And we're starting to, and like the Minnesota study did a very cursory look and they did show that it's possible for a plant to uptake PFAS from the soil or from the water. And it depends on what part of the plant you're looking at and what kind of plant is grown on there. There are a lot of variables, but the long-term consequence of growing the next season or the season after that, we're trying to figure that out right now. Those are the exact same questions that we're asking and that MDAR is asking, and we're trying to get the data on that.
So I mean, to give you a sense of it, so this question of the 70 part per trillion number, and the way you look at what sort of exposure are we talking about? So let's talk about how often would you have to drink it. We're talking about drinking like 2 to 3 liters a day, for at least a year, likely multiple years of that. And it would have to be well above 70 to where we would think actually harm could occur, and it's worth sort of asking that question more fully. So for people who are on private wells and you got a 59 or a 78 or a 83, you're in an area where, yeah, you want an answer, like what does that mean and what was it before and is it going to get better and all of that. But you're based on the current science, we would say that's probably low to minimal risk of ever causing harm. So when you then transfer a conversation about having to purely drink the water, drink it, not just bathe in it, not just touch it. We've heard about it's not bathing, it's not a concern, or occasionally contact, but drinking it that much, and then using something around 70 to end up on your garden going forward, it's probably a lesser risk. But we're not going to know until they do a much more intensive study to answer your question. So you're left in this sort of having to make a difficult risk choice. Now, if you were canning with parchment water, that's a different story, right? That's a very different story. That's back to like drinking it and you're soaking it. So we said throw those out. That was sort of like a clear, don't eat that, just throw it out, don't mess with it. The garden advice is very, we're trying to be very protective, but we can't give you a lot of certainty on that, okay? Yes?
Okay. Correct me if I'm not sure I read this before, but ASTDR and the CDC released an 850-some page report this year in June that actually recommends that 70 parts per trillion is too high. I don't recall the numbers, somewhere between 6 and 11.
Yeah, here, I'll get that. So absolutely, let's talk about that. So there's a couple of things. EPA's number adds together PFAS and PFOA. ATSDR does not. EPA calculates one number for everybody. ATSDR calculates two separate numbers, one for kids and one for adults. We all care about kids, and we all use the kid number, right? ATSDR, when looking at PFOS, was more concerned, felt that they needed to be more protective of the immunologic concerns, that PFAS may impair your ability to fight off disease, your immune system. So they came up with two numbers for kids. PFAS was 14 parts per trillion, PFOA 21 parts per trillion. And what does that mean? It means like if you're at 14 or 21, we would look at it and say, there's really no chance of harm. They built in orders of magnitude of protection. Let me go through my little spiel on how these numbers are calculated. They're based on animals. Okay, so they take rodents and they intentionally give them varying amounts of these chemicals, of these PFAS, PFOA. Then they found that the pups, the babies of the rodents, were the most sensitive. They said, well, what is the most sensitive endpoint of all the things they looked at? And it's the development of the pups, okay? They take that number, that's somewhere, say, up here, okay? A higher number. They then divide that number by 30, in the case of PFAS, by the EPA's number, and 300, I believe, for PFOA, for the EPA's calculation, okay? 33. So harm in rat pups is up here. We are now talking using numbers down here. Then